Okay, perfect.
After 18 years at Amazon, most recently as VP of Amazon Prime, our next speaker has jumped right into travel, heading the largest business unit of the world's fourth largest online travel seller. Please welcome Airbnb's President of Homes, Greg Greeley.
All right.
Greg, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
That, that intro really didn't do you justice because you weren't just the VP of Amazon Prime. It's kind of your baby, right? Did you start the...
Yeah, I was part of the invention of Prime, we'd call it. We were spending time thinking about what new service level we could provide for Amazon customers that had become to expect, not only a vast selection, but free delivery. And we were trying to find something that would help address the time-sensitive customers that wanted fast delivery as well.
And so I want to come back to Amazon Prime in a sec, but so when your position, your move to Airbnb was announced, it was positioned in a lot of the press as Airbnb goes outside of the industry to tap this new person to run homes. But actually, you're not new to travel. So you used to work for an airline, right? So you had how many years at United?
I did. I spent 6 years at United Airlines from a variety of projects, from introducing new technology to the customers there, the in-seat video, to acquiring a fleet of airplanes, and then strategic planning on asset utilization, trying to figure out how to get the most out of our utilization in the operations research area.
So how does it feel to be back?
That's great. It's exciting. The industry has changed a lot. When I was at the airlines, you could still, there's a lot of opportunity to do non-rev travel as an employee, and that was where I first got introduced to some of the challenges of accommodations and finding a home. This is all before the mobile phones or internet, and so it is much easier to travel now based on all the innovations of people in this room.
So you've been sort of out for some time, and you've spent an incredible career at one of the most kind of storied, interesting companies. It's a company that gets talked about at this conference, probably the most talked about non-travel company. Coming back into the industry, what's been, just kind of broadly, has there been like a surprise or a learning, maybe something, boy, there's an opportunity that our industry like really could do better or could fix?
Well, first, this conference is amazing. This is the first time I've been to a Phocuswright, and I've been amazed at the energy and the enthusiasm.
We could talk about that.
Yeah.
Say some more about that. That's great.
So that itself was a surprise to me because I had left the airline industry before Phocuswright was started. And so seeing that forward vision of how the internet and e-commerce and all of this innovation was going to help travel was great to see. Of course, Airbnb being one of them has really helped kind of break the barriers and push on how to innovate. The thing that surprised me the most, or I should say more of the realization as I started thinking about the move to Airbnb, was just how big the travel space is across all of the different categories and areas where people spend their travel dollars, be it for business or leisure, and the high degree of fragmentation that there is. And so, much like Amazon saw this massive global retail opportunity, there's just a massive global travel opportunity for all of us to kind of innovate on. And so there will continue to be lots of great innovations, and that's where driving the introduction of technology and thinking out 5 to 10 years is going to be really helpful for really reinventing how travel happens.
So loyalty is a really big issue in this industry. We've actually heard quite a bit about it kind of earlier with Hilton. Very big debate. It's a really big challenge. How do we define loyalty? And for I think most of the industry, it's really it's about kind of points and kind of give backs in a way. It's really more about rewards than true customer loyalty. But Prime is this extraordinary story. Like what made Prime so successful? Like, can you share a little bit of the secret sauce that we can we can apply?
Well, I will, but I will tie it back to Airbnb. I think one of the things that makes one of the things that makes a great kind of loyal customer is a great product, and trying to buy loyalty with incentives isn't going to work if you don't have a great product. And certainly at my time at Amazon, when thinking about how can we continue to drive repeat customers and continue to increase their engagement, we realized that Amazon customers were very loyal. And so that's why Prime was much more about providing new experiences or a premium experience. And the reason, tie back to Airbnb, I frequently get the question, is Airbnb going to launch a loyalty program? Shouldn't we have a loyalty program? And for me, it's like, we've got a great product. Airbnb, it's very clear that the hosts and guests that are engaged in the community love Airbnb and are very loyal. We see that with the repeat rates. Continue every year, we're seeing increased in not only new customers acquisition, but the repeat frequency as well. And so the key is building a great loyal product. And then if you want to do other things, like we have a super host program that celebrates and acknowledges our great hosts, and we are working on a super guest program that will do something similar for our most frequent guests. That's great, but you can't think of building out a loyalty program that doesn't have as a foundation a truly great product or a truly great experience.
Do you have any kind of impressions of kind of the state of loyalty within travel today, say among hotels, or how many loyalty programs do you belong to?
Well, I was just going to ask you the same question, or ask the audience. I actually have a number for probably every single chain hotel. I have a number for every single airline.
Are you still allowed to stay in hotels?
I have a number of boutique hotels that I've stayed at. I book them through Airbnb.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's back to my observation that there's definitely a high degree of fragmentation. We all know the history of how airline points were started, and if people could go back in time, if they'd rethink that when that started. But it's certainly one of those that you do find people that are very much married to their points in certain industries. But I think as all of us would acknowledge, there's a very wide distribution of different schemes like that.
So you did kind of tease my next question a little bit. So Airbnb loyalty program, we are all kind of waiting. We're presuming there's going to be something.
Yeah. Yep. Our team, as we talked about in February, we are working on something that will be a way of continuing to build on that foundation of a great product. So for us, it's first continue to innovate on the host guest community and those type of innovations like Airbnb Plus, like the Airbnb for Work. And then the super host program, which we do have out there, has been incredibly successful. We actually, these are our finest hosts that are, all have 80% or more 5-star reviews, and that's been growing 77% year on year. So we're going to do something like that for guests, where at least we can acknowledge, our super guests that are really adding back to the community. But we want to do it in an innovative way. It won't just be, something that looks like any other kind of loyalty program out there.
So a lot of discussion this week in particular about the state of Airbnb and Airbnb growth, or to some extent a lack thereof. There was a report, I think, from Morgan Stanley about this.
There's an unfortunate report from Morgan Stanley. We actually reached out to the Analyst because I have no other way to say it. The numbers are just wrong. I mean, it was unfortunate we didn't have a chance to at least give him that input before.
But growth has been slowing, and there have been numerous indicators.
Yeah, law of large numbers. Of course, you're seeing, when the company was growing at 200-300%, we're not near that level now, but the absolute numbers of the growth is still growing year on year. So, the absolute is still successful. Since I've been on board, we continue to increase the forecast from when I've been on board. Now, it's not due to anything I've done. That's the great work the team's been doing.
So
But just to close on the Morgan Stanley one, because it's just unfortunate, both the U.S. and the European numbers that are in there from 2017, 2018 are just wrong. And so we've got a meeting with Brian to try to help get you. We're a private company, so we can't actually share the details, but we want to make sure we help steer them, because it's always difficult when you're doing research versus seeing the actuals. Of course, sometimes you get some research bias or something.
That never happens at Phocuswright, by the way?
I'm sure.
Okay. But this is the classic problem of large companies. We've talked about this, quite a bit, and especially as online travel has matured. So what's what is the next big wave of growth? I mean, there's hotels, there's experiences. There was the big announcement at Airbnb Open a couple of years ago about flights and cars and restaurants. So what's going to drive that next big wave of growth for Airbnb?
Well, one of the reasons I joined Airbnb is after 18 years of listening to customers, and that kind of motivated what I was doing at my prior employer. It was very clear that Airbnb was built on listening to their community. And so the community kind of decides as the feedback of where we should be continuing to plant seeds and help grow and innovate. And so Airbnb is not a company that's going to just go after growth for growth's sake. It has to be something meaningful, and they're driving innovations for the community. And so I always hearken back to, there was a time when our founders, Joe and Brian and Nate, were requiring every host to have an Airbnb in their home. It's like, because the name was Airbnb, they wanted to have an airbed in the home. And then finally realized they're possibly kind of capping the TAM there. But more importantly, a lot of hosts were saying, well, I have an empty bedroom. And so listening to that community got them to reduce that and continue to expand. The community was very clear that they saw certain boutique hotels providing a tremendous amount of hospitality, bed and breakfast, so we've introduced those. Those are going to be continue to be a growth for us.
But the boutique hotel market, which we've actually we've sized. I mean, globally in the U.S. So in the U.S., I think it's somewhere around $5 billion or so. I mean, that's just it's such a small piece of the total hotel market. So just when we look at the total size of, say, some of that alternative type of accommodation, whether it's kind of guest houses or B&Bs or hostels, for example, that's still a really small small piece. And we also see kind of slowing kind of growth in kind of individual kind of homeowner supply. So is that really going to be enough, or like where else do you look?
Oh, there is no shortage of additional homes, be it individuals that would like to welcome guests into their homes, people that can be more productive with the listings that they do have, through calendar management. We certainly have. And in the boutique hotels and some of the bed and breakfasts, those areas are continuing to grow as well. But Airbnb is planting seeds in other ways. You mentioned, the talk about someday we could even possibly have flights. Experiences has been the seed that was planted a few years ago, and it has just been tremendous. It's been growing gangbusters. I think relative to the same time when we had started with the homes, it's 21 times as large. Just in this past year, they've grown to, if I get this number right, over 1,000 cities have over 150,000, 15,000, experiences. And so, and we're not just taking any experience that might be out there. It's not just taking the normal commoditized experiences that might be there.
So but that's not.
But we actually only accept about 70% of those that apply to do these truly, provide access and truly unique experiences.
Okay, we'll come back to that, but we have a question from the floor.
Yeah, so it seems that it's clear that companies like Expedia and Booking.com are moving into the alternative accommodations industry very quickly. And of course, Airbnb is also exploring the field with programs such as Airbnb Plus and also boutique hotels. But I'd love to understand, in terms of overall direction, will Airbnb take a continued aggressive stance in the hotels industry, such as the other two competitors have moved into the home sharing industry?
Well, as I mentioned, it's going to be based on what our community is looking for. So very much this global community that's now in 191 countries, over 81,000 cities. We heard very loud and clear that boutique hotels and bed and breakfast would be part of that equation, and people understand the hospitality there. Same thing with experiences. We got very strong feedback from that. And that's where we've been focused, is those things that are going to be additive. We actually don't really benchmark relative to others that might be out there. The industry is so large, there will be lots of winners. So there's no one prescription as to who's going to be successfully serving the travel community out there. So Airbnb is going to take a direction that leverages technology and the innovations that we can do, but includes a really important community component.
So you've pushed into two other areas as well, which are quite interesting. So one, the vacation rental marketplace, and in particular that traditional vacation rental world of property managers that may manage hundreds of units. and also kind of stepping into the independent hotel world as well with a deal with SiteMinder and some other systems as well. But there's, it seems to me like there's this kind of like existential branding question for Airbnb with this, right? So I've always thought, like when we rent a home on HomeAway or another site, we're renting a home, right? But when we book an Airbnb, everyone says, oh, I've booked an Airbnb. Yeah. So now if I have booked an Airbnb, but it's actually unit 210 in some Wyndham complex, is that really an Airbnb? I mean, how do you take this brand that you've created and this customer loyalty and not dilute that by going into these larger segments of the industry?
Well, I think you answered the question. Airbnb is going to be about community, not commodity. So if it's undifferentiated, it probably doesn't belong on Airbnb, right? We want to have a thing where the community has a say, where there is a personality, where there is a design perspective for any of the rooms that you stay in. And that's why Airbnb Plus was such a unique category for us. So we launched that in February. So for people that don't know, Airbnb Plus has a different design standard, has a very predictable experience. And this was something that we heard back from our community that people would like, those that would like to shop for a higher end. And since we've launched it, it's actually expanded to over 100 cities. We started in fewer. We've got, a typical Airbnb Plus host. So this is where somebody's gone in and upgraded the experience, gone through a 100-point checklist on kind of the design parameters that we have and the amenities. And they will be 9 times more likely to book than traditional Airbnb.
But it's still a...
We have a question from the audience.
Thank you. I think at Amazon, it's pretty well known that you guys figured out that dropping shipping fees accelerated velocity a lot. It's a core benefit of the Prime program. So as you move into the alternative accommodation space, are consumer fees kind of on the way out? I think you're testing moving that to host fees. Is that something you think could accelerate velocity for Airbnb?
I think it's a great question. From a standpoint of the overall value, we get clear feedback from all the research data that people recognize Airbnb is already providing a great financial value. So it's less around the fees. I think some of the things are, as we talked about why Airbnb Plus was important, is that it's giving that predictable experience with that different kind of category of design aesthetic. And we've seen great success. In fact, the survey would suggest that our guests that are staying in Airbnb Plus, that they'd be willing to pay as much as 50 to 75% more for those particular properties. So I think you were starting to say maybe a little small still. We're adding thousands a week. This is one that we're going to continue to grow because it's a super exciting category for us.
So if I, as the host for an Airbnb Plus home, do I have to make all of those investments myself?
Correct.
So Bill Gurley was speaking here yesterday. He made a really interesting comment. He said, well, why don't these guys just drop 200 million and put kind of key exchanges right on all of these units, or really take some steps to invest in that long tail? Do you guys think about that?
The team has thought about that, and it's a great question. I think that's one that we have looked at, and I think there may be opportunities for us to partner with hosts to really upgrade the experience in certain areas.
Because there are lots of companies also in the, I think of it as like an Airbnb or a rental ecosystem to provide, some of those services. HomeAway just, I think a few weeks ago, announced the acquisition of a couple of companies, Apartment Jet, I think, and Pillow, to facilitate their kind of growth in some of those segments. How do you think about kind of working with some of the different ecosystem companies to facilitate that? Because that continues to be a challenge, right, for this sector in general. And I've experienced this personally. I have one Airbnb and it's fantastic, and I've got another Airbnb and it's not so fantastic.
Yeah. So I think that's where Airbnb Plus does provide a more predictable experience for those that are looking for that. But the multifamily ecosystem is definitely an important one. When you look at Airbnb now, we have over 60 multifamily partners, apartment corporations that have access to over 1 million units that are available to be listed on Airbnb. And when you look at, I think 2017, the multifamily housing organization did a survey, and it showed millennials from age 25 to 34, 60% of them would like to be able to share their apartment. So this is one where we're going to continue to, we've got a friendly buildings program that is helping serve landlords, and we're going to continue to invest in those areas to kind of enable those that want to share their home when they're traveling or invite someone into their home to do so.
So that's an interesting point, actually, about the interest in sharing homes. But there's also cities and regulatory bodies, and for that matter, even neighbors that may not want the neighbor to be sharing their home. So how do you balance that? This has been a pretty challenging issue for Airbnb over the last year in particular, where the regulatory pace has been picking up, and it's not always been in the favor of Airbnb.
It's getting certainly a lot of press. I think we should level set with, Airbnb has hosts in over 81,000 cities. We have cooperated with over 500 cities that have put in, tourist tax collection systems. And again, we at Airbnb are very proud of the fact that we do want to be great stakeholders, partners with all of the stakeholders, be it the local community, the guests, or the hosts. But there's a few high-profile ones where, we are seeing regulation, and we take a very long-term view on that. We want to be partners with the cities to help meet the right kind of growth that they have. The beauty of Airbnb for tourism is generally you're bringing in a lot of tourists outside of the more central places. And so people that are traveling on their own, sharing their personal home or inviting people into neighborhoods that they would not have gotten to is super exciting, and the vast majority of cities welcome that.
So I want to go back to experiences in a little bit, and you brought up this, I think, a really important point about this idea of having this truly kind of personalized or custom experience. But I think for the world of tours and activities and attractions, and we see this in our own research, even folks who go to stay in an Airbnb, they may want to do the custom hat making experience in Paris, but they also want to eat a croissant under the Eiffel Tower. So how do you guys thinking about about that? I mean, your travelers want it. They want to buy tickets to the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre.
Well, you got to remember those are also already very well served, right? People can generally figure out how to find access to those. So Airbnb, and there's a fantastic team driving the experiences. They're very focused on that long tail of unique experiences where you can provide access. They're all people powered by someone in that community. They are all 100% hosted, and so that's serving our community in the best way possible. Of course, everybody will want to go to the Eiffel Tower or to the the particular locations once. But what we want to be there is for when they want that richer, kind of more localized experience, the things that locals would do in a given town.
So if we look out, say, so you've only been on the job, it's 6 months?
Just slightly over 6 months, yeah.
Okay, so I kind of had this question a little bit with Steve Hafner yesterday. So 6 years from now, what does your job look like? What's going to be the big challenge for you, maybe 6 years out, or what's going to be so different for Airbnb?
Well, I think I'll tell you what it won't be. It will still.
I love it how you ask a question and they turn it around and they try to answer a different one. Go ahead.
It will be a lot of the same things. It'll be listening to the community, trying to marry the technology that's available, the experiences that around travel that we can bring, and pushing the envelope of how technology can help enable that. That's kind of the basis of what Airbnb is. Our founders have talked about being focused on the magical trip, where all elements of travel, there's probably an area of introducing people-powered, kind of more local experiences that delight, that are differentiated. And so even 5 years from now, it'll still be those same kind of premises. It may be just on a much bigger platform or in different segments or different categories.
Will I be able to book a flight on Airbnb?
Well, you can actually book a flight on Airbnb today.
Oh, really?
You can. Our experiences team has this great little tour where you can go learn to fly a plane out of a local airport here. So, Flights is launched.
Okay, will I be able to book a JW Marriott in 5 years?
I don't know. I would be surprised given the way that we currently do, but I certainly am not thinking that 5 years from now we'll be looking at bringing in commodities. We'll be very focused on a community experience that is personalized.
Will I be able to buy an Eiffel Tower ticket?
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Will Airbnb?
If it is, it will certainly have a personal, a community component to it. So from somebody in France will be giving you a personal perspective.
Will Airbnb be a public company?
We have said that we will be IPO ready by next summer. So we are working really hard on meeting that objective. And it's actually one of those things where it actually helps us stay fairly focused on some of the things that, particularly on the infrastructure and pieces on the regular reporting that would help. It would certainly help from things like these studies coming out with incorrect numbers if we were public and publishing quarterly.
Okay. Well, we'll check back in with you next year, and we'll see how things are going. So, ladies and gentlemen,
all right,
Greg Greeley, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yep.